Hello guys, welcome to my channel Lucid Fanfic, and if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest videos. So be sure to stick around until the end, and let's get started. A new day passed for Izuku as he went through the usual. His mother Inko and father Tashi didn't acknowledge his existence that morning, but he didn't care anymore. He knew they will never acknowledge his dreams. He packed his bag and stepped outside. The air was crisp with the smell of spring flowers, and the chirp of birds was the only sound that pierced the silence of the early dawn. He took a breath and headed to Aldura High, the school he calls hell. At Aldura, in their classroom before it would begin, the air was charged with the usual mix of excitement and tension. Izuku's sister, Izumi, sat between two familiar faces, Shoko Todoroki and Katsumi Bakugo. The three of them were deep in conversation about their hero futures. Izumi's mind played back the conversation from the night before with her parents. The revelation about her father being All Might and her mother being Green Magnet, both pro-heroes, was still a shock. But it also brought a newfound hope and excitement for her future. She knew she had the potential to be great, and now she had the power to match her dreams. Her eyes gleamed with ambition as she thought about the incredible journey ahead of her, eager to inherit one for all. Knowing with such a quirk piled up with her own, she could surpass everyone and protect Izuku from the shadows of the world. Izuku. Izumi's mind lingered a bit longer on the name of her brother, the one she had been bullying alongside Shoko and Katsumi for so long. It wasn't spite or jealousy that fueled their actions. No, it was fear. Fear for his safety and a desperate love that could not bear the thought of losing him to the same fate that had claimed so many heroes. The three of them had been close as children, dreaming of the day they would stand alongside their hero parents and protect the world. But as time passed, it became clear that Izuku's dream was a dangerous illusion. He had no quirk, no power to defend himself in a world where strength was the only currency that mattered. Katsuki had always been the ringleader, his explosive temper and unbridled ambition setting the tone for their group. One day, he had looked at Izuku with a mix of pity and scorn, declaring that he was destined to be nothing but a burden to the hero world. It was then that the trio had agreed to bully Izuku, to save him from the pain they knew he would face. It had started as a way to protect him, a twisted form of tough love to convince him to give up his foolish dreams. The three still remember back when they first started bullying and hurting Izuku, how much he screamed, sobbed, and begged them to stop when they attacked him. The trio had felt their hearts wrench and their souls burn with guilt. On many occasions after they broke Izuku and left him bruised, burned, and hurt, they wanted to burst into tears and hold him tightly, apologizing for the pain they had inflicted. But they couldn't, not with the fear that if they didn't, their world would crumble and take him with it. Izumi's mind wandered back to yesterday before they left him in class, when she had snapped, her words echoing in the silent room. Pray you get a quirk in the afterlife and take a swan dive off the edge of a roof. She cringed at the memory of her harshness, the cruelty she had thrown at Izuku like a dagger. She had never meant to say such a thing. The words had tumbled out in a rush of anger and fear. Her stomach churned with guilt and regret as she remembered the look of utter despair that had washed over his face. Izumi felt disgusted and sick to herself, knowing that she had to continue this charade. But she had made a pact with Shoko and Katsumi to keep bullying Izuku until he gave up his hero dream. It was for his own good, they had convinced themselves. Yet, as she watched him from afar, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was losing a piece of her soul every time she heard him. As the last of the students piled in with the bell ringing, sessions began. Izuku was no different. He remained neutral-faced while doing his notes, but he was also working on a new hero analysis notebook. After his talk with Nezu last night in the park, how much the principal of UA University praised his work and how he gave him the offer of becoming a teacher at another high school after his graduation, his spirit was lifted. He just had to get through today and keep his head down. He can live with going through the bullying. It's what he was good at as always. On occasions, some students would toss paper ball and try to get him to freak out like always, but today, Izuku didn't flinch or get baited into them. This didn't go unnoticed by Shoko, Katsumi, and Izumi. The trio exchanged puzzled glances, their brows furrowing as they watched him. It was unlike Izuku to be so calm and collected in the face of their usual taunts. Katsumi leaned over to Shoko, whispering, "What's gotten into him today?" Shoko fixated on Izuku. "Maybe he's finally realized his place," she murmured, trying to convince herself as much as Katsumi. The mention of this made the trio's heart flutter in excitement. They had always felt guilty for their actions, and deep down, they had hoped that one day, Izuku would understand their intentions. The thought of him finally giving up his futile dream and accepting a safe, quiet life brought them a strange sense of relief. Shoko, Katsumi, and Izumi allowed themselves a brief moment to imagine the future they had so desperately painted in their minds. Izuku, a stay-at-home husband, pampered and adored, living a life free from the perils of the hero world. They saw themselves coming home from a long day of saving the city, bruised but triumphant, to be greeted by his warm smile and a comforting embrace. Their hearts swelled at the thought of showering him with gifts, the latest gadgets, and stories of their heroic exploits. They would all live together in a beautiful house. They would shower Izuku with affection, making him the center of their world when they weren't out fighting villains. It was a future they had crafted to ease their consciences, a life where they could keep him safe from the dangers of being a hero. Their minds dwelled deeper as they imagined taking Izuku to bed, removing his clothes to reveal the untouched body they had so often fantasized about. Izumi, Shoko, and Katsumi's cheeks flushed at the thought of their hands exploring every inch of him, feeling the heat of his skin against theirs. They had never been shy about sharing their desires with each other, their friendship a bond forged in the fires of their own burgeoning sexuality. The three girls exchanged knowing glances, their thoughts mirroring each other's. They had always felt a deep attraction to Izuku, a yearning that went beyond mere friendship. In their minds, they saw themselves tangled in, each one eager to claim and pleasure the other, all for the sake of their beloved Izuku. They imagined their kisses, gentle at first, turning passionate and desperate, as they sought to satisfy their own needs while also bringing him to new heights of pleasure. Their lewd daydream grew more vivid, each of them visualizing themselves wrapped around Izuku in a tangled mess of limbs and passion. Shoko imagined her on top of him, her quirk allowing her to manipulate the very fabric of heat and cold, giving them a unique experience while she rode him with fiery passion. She pictured herself leaning down to whisper sweet nothings into his ear, her breath a warm caress against his cheek, as she used her power to create a gentle, yet intense warmth that would drive him wild. Katsumi, on the other hand, saw herself lying beneath Izuku while he used his newfound strength to drive into her, his hands gripping her shoulders with gentle dummy as she arched her back in ecstasy. Her blast quirk used when she would slap his butt so. This was the end of part 4 of this series. Stay tuned for next part of this series, and if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time, sending waves of pleasure through her body as she felt the heat and power of his touch. In her mind, she could feel his warmth, his love for them all, as she wrapped her legs around his waist, urging him deeper. Izumi's thoughts grew even more heated as she pictured herself lying beside Izuku, her quirk allowing her to manipulate gravity in the most close of ways. She envisioned herself hovering over him, her melons grazing his chest as she took him in hand, guiding him into her. With a flick of her wrist, she would control the weightlessness of their bodies, creating a sensation of floating in a sea of passion. Her touch would be feather-light yet firm, making every stroke feel like a gentle caress that could also be a powerful grip. Her breath would be hot and heavy against his neck as she whispered sweet reassurances that he was loved, that he was safe, that he was theirs. Their imagination took a more deeper turn when the three imagined themselves with Izuku in a heated sun. All three tangled with Izuku on the bed as they would pleasure Izuku together, the sounds of their moans and sighs melding into a symphony of desire. The girls not just pleasuring Izuku but with each other, a display of their love and attraction for one another, a bond that had grown stronger over the years of their friendship. The thought of getting pregnant with his children brought a new warmth to their cheeks. They saw themselves with swollen bellies, feeling the life of a little hero growing inside them. The joy of watching their babies inherit a blend of their quirks, a unique mix of ice, fire, and telekinesis filled them with a maternal longing they had never experienced before. They imagined Izuku, a doting father, looking at them with love and pride as they grew round with his offspring. The idea of creating a family together, a safe haven for all of them, was a flirty one. Their hearts fluttered at the thought of retiring from the hero world, trading in their capes and masks for the quiet life. They envisioned themselves settling down in a quaint house with Izuku, raising their little heroes together. The battles of their past would be replaced with bedtime stories and laughter, the scent of home-cooked meals filling the air. The trio had fought alongside each other, bled together, and now they dreamt of growing old with him, sharing the quiet moments that heroes rarely get to cherish. The bell's shrill ring brought them back to reality, snapping them out of their shared daydream. They looked at each other, the same understanding in their eyes. It was time to rejoin their world, the one where they were the heroes and Izuku was the damsel in distress. With a collective sigh, they steeled themselves for the task ahead. They had to continue their bullying for his own good. Katsuki, ever the leader, was the first to stand up, the fiery determination back in his eyes. "Let's go," he said, his voice firm and commanding. Shoko and Katsumi followed suit, their expressions shifting from lustful to cold indifference. They knew the drill all too well. Izuku had to be kept in line, his spirit broken to keep him from the dangers of the world they knew all too well. Izuku was packing his things and ready to leave, but saw his tormentors approaching. He sighed and whispered to himself, "Here we go again." He decided to get it over with. "Hey, Deku," Katsuki sneered, using the nickname that was supposed to be a playful term of endearment, but had morphed into a weapon to belittle Izuku. "Looks like you're still delusional about being a hero. Give it up already." Izuku didn't say a word to him, not wanting to give him any satisfaction, but it only pissed Katsuki off more. He grabbed Izuku by his collar and barked in his face. "I'm talking to you, you little one." Still getting no response, Katsuki tossed him and blasted his back with his explosive quirk. Izuku yelled in pain as he collapsed on his hands and knees. Shoko stepped forward, her eyes glowing with a chilling intent. "Why do you insist on this pathetic dream, Deku?" she asked, her voice like the crackling of ice. "You're just setting yourself up for failure." Izuku didn't say a word while he weakly got up to his feet. He was suddenly slammed against the wall by the force of Izumi's quirk as she stepped closer, her voice like the crack of a WHP. "Deku," she spat, her voice dripping with disdain. "Do you really think you're something special? You're just a quirkless freak playing dress-up. You're a joke, and everyone knows it." Izuku remained silent, his eyes downcast, as he bore the weight of Izumi's insults. The pain in his back throbbed from the explosive impact, but he knew better than to retaliate. It was a dance they had performed countless times, a ritual that was as much a part of their lives as breathing. Katsumi moved forward, the flicker of a sadistic smile playing on her lips. She knew she had to go next. She raised her hand, and a fiery aura surrounded it, the heat palpable even from a distance. She brought it closer to Izuku's face, watching as his eyes watered and his skin reddened from the intense heat. "You're pathetic," she spat, her voice a mix of contempt and pity. "You don't deserve to be a hero, not even in your wildest dreams." Her quirk released the explosion as Izuku screamed in pain, feeling his skin going red and getting a burn. He was dropped to the ground before a foot slammed on his chest and got a cold, wet frostbite, courtesy of Shoko. "Give it up, Izuku," she whispered coldly. "You're not meant for this world. You're just a burden." The 3 girls and 2 boys ascended him as Izuku braced for another beatdown. Young Izuku limped out of the school while heading to the park to meet with Nezu about heading to that school he told about. His face was covered in burn marks and bruises while his uniform was singed in places, but he paid no mind to it. Nezu waited patiently at the park bench, his keen eyes noticing Izuku's condition immediately. "What happened, Izuku?" he asked, his concern genuine. "It's just another day," Izuku replied in a quiet tone, his voice carrying the weight of resignation. "It's what I'm used to." Nezu's heart sank as he took in the sight of Izuku's bruised and burned body. He knew that Katsuki and the others were the culprits, the very names that had been whispered in his ears last night. The thought of these so-called friends, these hero-in-training bullies, bringing such pain to the boy who had been through so much already made him furious. He also promised to investigate the situation at Aldara High School further. He could not believe that in a school that was supposed to nurture heroes, students like Izuku were subjected to such cruelty. He would not stand for it, not on his watch. "Come with me," Nezu said gently, placing a comforting hand on Izuku's shoulder. "Let's get you to the hospital." Guiding him to his car, Izuku hesitated. "No, I'm okay. Really." He tried to reason. "You are not okay," Nezu said firmly, his eyes narrowed. "You shouldn't have to endure this." He opened the door for Izuku, who reluctantly got in. The drive to the hospital was silent, the weight of the conversation hanging in the air like a storm cloud. At the hospital, Nezu made sure Izuku was seen immediately. He didn't leave his side, even as the nurses and doctors tended to his injuries. The concern etched on Nezu's face was unmistakable. Izuku felt a warmth spread through his chest, something foreign to the coldness he usually felt from his so-called friends. Finally, with his burns and bruises dressed in clean bandages, they left the hospital. The ride to Anaya High was quiet. The only sound was the hum of the engine and the occasional wail of the wind outside. Izuku couldn't help but feel a sense of patheticness as he looked down at his hands, the bandages stark white against his pale skin. He was such a scrawny kid, a stark contrast to the towering heroic figures he saw in his dreams. He made a silent promise to himself that he would work out more, bulk up, so he wouldn't look so weak. As they pulled up to the school gates, Izuku couldn't help but stare in awe. Anaya High was unlike any school he had ever seen. It was a gleaming bastion of hope, with a sleek modern design that seemed to whisper promises of a bright future. The students passing by had a certain spark in their eyes, a sense of purpose that was infectious. Nezu was eager to show Izuku around Anaya High, his excitement palpable as they stepped out of the car. He had spoken so highly of Principal Shizuka and the school's inclusive environment that Izuku couldn't help but feel a spark of hope ignite within him. The gates of the school stood tall and proud, the symbol of the school's philosophy etched into the gleaming metal, empowerment through knowledge. As they entered the school grounds, the stark difference from Aldara was immediately apparent. The air was filled with laughter and chatter, not the heavy silence of fear and resentment. The buildings were adorned with murals of students of all backgrounds and abilities, working together to achieve their dreams. Nezu's eyes lit up as he led Izuku to the principal's office, his steps quick and sure. "Wow," Izuku marveled while looking around the halls they walked. "This place is way different than Aldara." "Yes, it is," Nezu said with a proud smile. "Hey, every student is valued for their unique potential, not just their quirks. Principal Shizuka has created an environment where everyone can grow and thrive." The more Izuku saw the effort of this woman and her philosophy, the more he felt excited to meet her. His new goal of becoming a teacher at her school grew stronger as they approached the principal's office. The walls of the school were lined with inspirational quotes and stories of heroes who had overcome adversity, each one speaking to Izuku's soul. Nezu's knuckles rapped gently against the wood of the principal's office door, the sound echoing softly in the hallway. "Come in," called a melodious voice from within, and Izuku felt his heart flutter with anticipation. Nezu opened the door, revealing a warm, inviting space filled with natural light and the scent of fresh flowers. Both entered the office as Izuku's eyes bulged out seeing the woman before him. Principal Shizuka was indeed a sight to behold. She was a voluptuous, busty woman with a motherly aura that radiated warmth and acceptance. Her eyes, a soft shade of brown, twinkled with intelligence and kindness behind her spectacles. Her hair, a cascade of chestnut waves, framed her face perfectly, and her smile was as genuine as it was disarming. She wore a tailored suit that hugged her curves in all the right places, exuding both professionalism and approachability. Despite her look of intimidation or beauty, her expression and warm aura immediately made Izuku feel at ease. "Welcome, Nezu-san," Shizuka greeted warmly, her smile as bright as the sun. She glanced to Izuku and brightened more. "Is this him?" Nezu nodded, his eyes sparkling. "This is Izuku," the prodigy I've told you about. Izuku, this is Principal Shizuka. Izuku, feeling a mix of nerves and awe, bowed deeply, his heart racing. It's an honor to meet you, Principal Shizuka, he said, his voice quivering slightly. Shizuka's eyes widened, and she beamed. Oh, what a sweet boy, she exclaimed, stepping around her desk with surprising grace. She opened her arms wide and enveloped Izuku in a warm embrace. You're even more adorable in person. Izuku's cheeks turned a crimson red, and his eyes widened in surprise as he stumbled back a step. He had never been hugged by a principal before, especially one who called him adorable. Thank you, he mumbled, his voice barely above a whisper. Shizuka chuckled, her eyes shining with amusement. No need to be shy, Izuku. Now, let's sit down and talk. She gestured to the comfortable chairs in front of her desk. They nodded as they went to sit. Shizuka didn't know about it, but soon saw the bandages on him. Her eyes widened in concern, and she gave Nezu a questioning look, which he met with a grim nod. Clearly, there was a story behind those bandages, but now was not the time to pry. I've heard a lot about you, Shizuka began as she sat opposite Izuku. Nezu has been singing your praises. He says you have quite the knack for analyzing quirks. Is that true? Izuku nodded, his cheeks flushing under the scrutiny of her gaze. He clutched the quirk analysis notebook tightly to his chest, feeling a mix of pride and nerves. Yes, I've studied quirks for as long as I can remember. With a gentle smile, Principal Shizuka reached out her hand. Would you mind showing me, Day? She asked, her eyes filled with curiosity and kindness. Izuku swallowed hard and handed over his precious notebook, feeling a sense of vulnerability wash over him as he watched her thumb through the pages. He had poured his heart and soul into it, every analysis a testament to his unyielding hope. The pages were worn and smudged, a map of his countless hours of study and passion. Shizuka's eyes widened with every turn of the page, her expression shifting from curiosity to astonishment. She read through his meticulous notes, her gaze lingering on the detailed diagrams and observations. His heart pounded in his chest as he watched her reaction, fearing that she would think it was nothing more than the scribbles of a quirkless dreamer. This is incredible, she murmured, her voice filled with awe. Your analysis is like nothing I've ever seen before. Izuku's eyes grew wide, and he sat up straighter in his chair. Really? He stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Do you really mean it? Principal Shizuka looked up from the notebook, her smile never wavering. Of course, I do, she said warmly. Your mind is a treasure trove of knowledge and understanding, Izuku. Your passion for quirks and heroism is evident in every word and drawing. Izuku felt his cheeks burn hotter as he ducked his head, his eyes misting slightly. It was rare for someone to praise him like this, especially someone as esteemed as Principal Shizuka. He had spent so much of his life being dismissed or belittled that the kindness was almost overwhelming. He clenched his hands into fists, willing himself not to cry in front of her. Shizuka, noticing his reaction, felt a red flag rise within her. This wasn't the reaction of a boy who was used to positive attention. It was the reaction of someone who craved it, someone who had been denied it for far too long. She glanced at Nezu, her eyes questioning, and his solemn nod only deepened her concern. Izuku, her voice gentle as it got the boy's attention. If it's okay to ask, can I ask what you dream to be? Izuku took a deep breath, his eyes momentarily flickering with pain before he steadied himself. I wanted to be a hero, he said, his voice cracking slightly. But I'm quirkless. Shizuka's expression grew serious as she leaned forward, her gaze never leaving Izuku's eyes. And what happened, my dear? She prompted, her tone filled with empathy. Izuku took a deep, shaky breath and began to recount his story. I always wanted to be a hero, he admitted, his voice growing stronger as he talked. But when I was little, I realized I didn't have a quirk. He paused, his eyes misting over as he remembered the cruel taunts from his classmates, the way his own sister looked at him with disdain, and how his friends, Kitsuki and the others, turned their backs when he confessed his dream. Everyone said I couldn't do it, that I was just a burden. The room was quiet as he spoke, Nezu's eyes never leaving him, filled with a mix of anger and sorrow. My parents, they don't acknowledge me much. When they do, it was always punishment or scolding, something I never did. His tears welled as he held a sob back. And then my idol All Might, he told me straight to my face that I couldn't be a hero because I didn't have a quirk. He broke down crying with his head lowered. I realize now, it was all just a lie. I can't be a hero. His voice cracked as he whispered the words, feeling like he was admitting defeat. Shizuka's heart broke as she saw the pain etched on Izuku's face. She couldn't believe someone so young could carry such a heavy burden for so long. She felt a surge of protectiveness rise within her, a fierce need to shield him from the cruelty of the world that had cast him aside. With a grace that belied her size, she stood up and walked around the desk, her movements swift and fluid. She knelt down before Izuku, her hand reaching out to gently cup his cheek. He looked up at her, his eyes red and puffy from crying, searching for something in her gaze. "Izuku," she said softly, her voice like a balm to his bruised spirit. "You are not a burden. You are a treasure, a diamond in the rough, waiting to be polished by the right hands." But he tried to speak. "Sure," she soothed, her thumb gently stroking his cheek. "You don't have to justify yourself to anyone, least of all me. Your spirit, your intelligence, and your empathy are more than enough to make you a hero." Her words hit Izuku like a meteor, shattering the berries of doubt and despair that had surrounded him for so long. The tears flowed freely now, a river of emotion that he hadn't allowed himself to express in years. He couldn't hold back the wails that bubbled up from deep within him, the pain of his rejection and isolation finally finding an outlet. Shizuka's expression grew even more concerned as she saw the depth of his pain. "Come here." Without a second thought, she scooped him into her arms, hugging him tightly as he sobbed into her shoulder. Her embrace was warm and comforting, a stark contrast to the coldness he was accustomed to. She rocked him gently, her hands rubbing his back in soothing circles as she hushed him like a mother would a distressed child. "It's okay, Izuku," she murmured into his ear, her voice a gentle whisper. "You're not alone anymore." Izuku clung to her, his body trembling with the force of his sobs. He hadn't felt a motherly hug in years, not since he was a child before he was diagnosed quirkless to his family. He always dreamed of once more feeling this warmth that filled him up and made the world feel less cold. Now, in Principal Shizuka's embrace, it was as if all those years of neglect were being washed away, replaced by a sense of belonging and acceptance. Izuku continued to cry and sob his pain and sorrow out while Shizuka held him, her warm embrace offering him the comfort he had long been denied. Her gentle whispers of encouragement and the steady rhythm of her breathing helped to calm him down. The tears on his face felt like a river receding back to the sea, leaving him feeling emotionally exhausted but lighter. Nezu watched them from his seat, his gaze never leaving the two of them. His expression was one of understanding and warmth, allowing the moment to unfold without interference. He knew that sometimes the best thing one could do was to offer silent support, to let others heal in their own time and their own way. His eyes never left Izuku, his mind racing with thoughts of what he could do to ensure that the young boy never had to endure such pain again. Shizuka held Izuku for as long as he needed, her hand gently rubbing his back as his sobs turned to hiccups. She whispered soft, comforting words into his ear, the kind that only a mother could say, promising him that he was valued and that he had a place in this world. The sound of her voice, soothing and gentle, washed over him like a balm, soothing the raw wounds of his soul. Finally, the storm of emotion passed, and Izuku pulled away, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. He felt embarrassed, but Shizuka only offered a warm smile and a box of tissues. He took one gratefully, feeling the softness of the paper against his skin as he blew his nose. He took a deep breath while wiping his eyes. "I'm sorry for crying. I just held on to all this pain for so long." Shizuka shushed him, her thumb wiping a stray tear from his cheek. "There's no need to apologize, Izuku. It's okay to let it out." Her voice was as warm as a summer's embrace, as gentle as a lullaby. "You've been carrying a heavy burden, and sometimes we all need a safe place to let go of our pain." Izuku nodded, taking a deep, shaky breath. The weight of his past seemed to lift slightly, the burden of his solitude easing in the warmth of her words. He felt a newfound strength in his core, a spark of hope that had been all but extinguished by the cruelty of the world around him. He gave the woman a small, warm smile, something he hasn't done in years. "Thank you." Shizuka chuckled gently, standing up and helping him to his feet. "Now, let's talk about your future," she said, leading him back to the chairs. She sat at her desk again and asked, "Your skills will be amazing to teach my students and work on their quirks and abilities to be great heroes. Would you like to have the opportunity to be a teacher here when you become 18? Izuku's heart swelled in his chest at the mere mention of teaching. While his dream as a hero was long gone, the thought of passing on his knowledge and helping others achieve their dreams filled him with a newfound sense of purpose. In his mind's eye, he could see himself standing in front of a classroom full of eager students, each one holding onto his every word as they strive to become the heroes they aspired to be. He imagined the look of awe and understanding as they grasped the complexities of quirks, the way their eyes would light up when they realized the potential within themselves. He saw their quirks evolving under his guidance, becoming tools of protection and justice, not weapons of fear and intimidation as they had been in his own school experience. His notebook pages fluttered open, revealing a future where his theories and analysis were not just scribbled thoughts but the foundation of a new generation of heroes. "Yes," Izuku managed to stutter out, his voice still thick with emotion. "I would love to be a teacher, hey." Shizuka's eyes sparkled with joy as she looked at the hope rekindling in Izuku's gaze. "Wonderful," she said, placing his notebook gently on the desk. "Your insights and dedication are exactly what we need at Anaya High. We'll work together to ensure that every student here has the opportunity to shine." Nezu nodded in agreement, his own eyes shining with excitement. "We'll make sure that you have all the resources you need to prepare for your future career, Izuku. We believe in you." Izuku felt a lump form in his throat as he took in the supportive words from these two adults, something that was foreign to him in his school life. He took a deep breath, feeling a sense of belonging that was as surprising as it was overwhelming. "Thank you," he said, his voice stronger now. "I won't disappoint you." Principal Shizuka's eyes gleamed with excitement as she looked at Izuku. "Oh, I have no doubt you won't," she said, her voice filled with confidence. "In 3 years, you'll be graduating and ready to take on the world. And when you do, I want you by my side, helping to mold the heroes of tomorrow." The thought of working alongside Shizuka at Anaya High was more than Izuku could have ever dreamed. For so long, he had felt like an outcast, a burden to those around him. Now, he was being offered a chance to contribute, to be part of something greater. He could feel the warmth of purpose spreading through his chest, filling him with a determination that was as potent as any quirk. As they left the principal's office, Nezu gave him a gentle pat on the back. "You're going to do great things here, Izuku," he said, his voice filled with belief. Izuku couldn't help but smile at the kindness, feeling a weight lifting off his shoulders that he hadn't noticed was there. The ride back home was much more relaxed than the tense trip to the hospital. Izuku sat in the passenger seat, his eyes glued to the scenery outside, his mind racing with the possibilities of what lay ahead at Anaya High. The world looked different now, brighter, as if the gray clouds that had followed him for so long had finally parted to reveal the blue sky and the sun. Nezu drops Izuku off at the boys' home and left. Izuku enters, not greeting since he didn't care about the neglect anymore from his own parents. As he climbed the stairs to his room, he felt a new sense of determination in his step. The encounter with Principal Shizuka had changed something within him, had given him a glimpse of a future that didn't involve being stepped on by others. But his brief moment of peace was shattered when he bumped into his sister, Izumi, in the hallway. She glared at him with a snarl, her quirk manifesting in a way that would send shivers down his spine. But he didn't feel scared of her anymore. "Watch it, Deku," she spat, her voice as cold as her telekinesis wavered in her fingers. For once, Izuku didn't shrink away from her. He met her gaze with a blunt expression, one that didn't hold fear or anger, but something else entirely. "Excuse me," he said calmly before walking past her and entering his bedroom before closing the door. Izumi was left standing in the hallway, her hand hovering where she had intended to use her quirk to push him away. A flicker of something unfamiliar played across her features, a mix of surprise and discomfort. She had never seen her brother look at her like that before, with a calm defiance that didn't waver even in the face of a power. As she turned to walk away, she couldn't shake off the feeling that something had shifted in their dynamic. The usual fear and subservience in his eyes had been replaced with a quiet strength, a resolve that was as surprising as it was unsettling. She found herself wondering what had changed in him, what could have possibly given him the courage to stand up to her. She didn't know then and there that everything will change in 3 years. The sound of Izuku's alarm clock woke him from his slumber. He groaned a bit but slapped it off as he sat up and yawned. With a few joints popped, he took a breath. Well, another day begins. As he dressed in his usual school uniform, he reflected everything that happened in a short time span. Meeting Nezu, then meeting Shizuka, both supporting him and giving him a brighter future, and now given a job as a teacher at Anaya High in 3 years. He felt happy that these two believe in him so much, something Inko and Toshi have failed to do for him in the last decade of his life. Izuku grabbed his backpack and headed downstairs, the sound of his footsteps echoing through the silent house. In the kitchen, Inko was busy preparing breakfast, while Toshi read the newspaper, both engrossed in their own worlds. They didn't even bother to look up as he passed by, their indifference as palpable as the stale air in the room. He used to crave their attention, their acknowledgement of his existence, but now he had goals that didn't revolve around their opinions. Ignoring their apathy, Izuku opened the fridge and pulled out a cereal bar and an apple, shoving them into his pocket for later. He didn't need a grand send-off or lecture about being safe. He knew the drill. He'd been navigating the schoolyard minefield alone for years. With a shrug, he slung his backpack over his shoulder and opened the door, the cool morning air rushing in to replace the stifling silence of his home. Izuku walked down the sidewalk, basking in the warm morning air and taking in a breath and sigh. But his peace was broken when he heard Izumi behind him. "Deku." He glanced back and saw her jogging to catch up, her cheeks flushed with the exertion of the early morning. When she caught up, Izumi caught her breath before saying, "What was up with your behavior last night, Deku?" She demanded a bit. She was still trying to process the interaction last night, how he did not flinch when she threatened him. Izuku glanced at her, his eyes betraying no emotion. "What behavior are you referring to, Izumi?" he asked calmly, continuing to walk. He knew she was talking about the conversation they had when she tried to convince him to quit his hero dreams, but he wasn't going to make this easy for her. Izumi's eyes narrowed as she caught up next to him. "Don't play dumb. You know what I'm talking about," she said, her voice carrying a hint of frustration. "You didn't even flinch when I got in your face last night. It was like you weren't even listening. What's it to you?" he asked as if he didn't care. Izumi searched Izuku's face for any sign of what she hoped to find. The shy, timid little brother who had always looked up to her, the one she could easily manipulate with her words. But she found none of that today. His eyes were clear, focused, and she didn't miss the steel in his voice when he spoke. It unnerved her, and she didn't like the feeling. But, in a twisted way to make herself feel better, she began to hope that maybe, just maybe, he was finally seeing the light. Perhaps he was starting to realize that being a hero wasn't worth the pain and suffering he was destined to endure. She wanted to believe that her relentless bullying had finally broken him. "You're going to regret talking back to me like that at school, Deku," she sneered, trying to maintain her facade of superiority. "Everyone knows their place, and you're starting to forget yours." Izuku stopped in his tracks and turned to face her, his gaze unwavering. "I've never cared about what people think of me. Least of all you, Izumi." With that, he went past the school gates to class, leaving his sister there at the entrance gate. Izumi stood there, stunned by his words. It was as if a switch had been flipped inside of him. The weak and malleable Izuku she knew was nowhere to be found, replaced by someone she didn't recognize. Her stomach twisted into a knot, unease settling in her core. She had never seen such resolve in her brother's eyes. This new change in her brother scared her, unsure of what it could mean for her plans. The school hours ticked by for Izuku as everything was normal in his way, enduring never-ending bullying and mockery from the students and teachers who scorn him for being quirkless. But he lets the words glide off him like water off a duck's back, his mind already racing ahead to the future he's meticulously crafted for himself. The whispers and jeers of his classmates didn't hold the same power anymore. He had a mission to prepare for the next 3 years until he could finally escape to Anaya High and start his journey towards becoming a teacher. The first step in his plan was to find a part-time job to gain independence and save up for himself. While he made a nice fortune when he sold his All Might merch, Izuku knew that relying on that alone would be unsustainable. He needed to stand on his own 2 feet, to show his family and the world that even without a quirk, he could still be someone. So, he planned after school, he will go out job hunting. But it will be hard since 99% of businesses rely on quirks, and they don't take kindly to someone without one. He knew that, but he had to start somewhere. He had to start showing everyone that he was more than just a quirkless freak. The next part of his plan after getting a job was to get in shape, both physically and mentally. Izuku knew that being a teacher meant that he had to be capable of handling any situation that could arise, including protecting his future students. He decided to look for a gym where he could train in the evenings, and maybe even some self-defense classes on weekends. Looking at himself now, Izuku hated how skinny and scrawny he was when he never once worked out and only focused back on hoping his now-dead dream came true. But he knew he had to change that. He couldn't be the hero he always wanted to be, but he could be someone else's hero. He could be the teacher that encouraged them to chase their dreams, even in the face of adversity. Quickly leaving after the final bell rang, Izuku left the school as he went on his job hunt. As he predicted, getting one wasn't easy from the start. He got rejected from almost every place he applied to. Some laughed at his hopefulness, while others just ignored his pleas. His determination never wavered, though. He knew that giving up now would be letting down not just Nezu and the principal, but himself. As he was walking down the street, a peculiar sight caught his eye. A small, cozy-looking cafe with a sign that read Made Miracle. He went to it now in hopes he can get hired. He opened the door and entered. The inside was very welcoming, with walls painted in pastel colors and cute decorations. The smell of freshly baked pastries filled the air, making his stomach growl. Izuku's gaze was immediately drawn to the cute women in maid outfits bustling around, serving customers with genuine smiles. His cheeks grew red as he felt a bit out of place, but the warmth of the cafe's atmosphere put him at ease. He approached one of the maids, who was wiping down a table. She looked up at him with a smile that seemed to light up the entire room. "Hello, welcome to Made Miracle," the maid chirped, her smile never wavering. "Are you looking for something in particular?" Izuku took a deep breath and managed to squeak out his question. "Do you have any job openings here?" The maid's smile grew even wider as she nodded. "Oh, yes, we're actually looking for a new part-timer." She clapped her hands together in a flourish. "Let me get the owner, Miss Hannah. She'll be thrilled to meet you." With that, she dashed off to the back, leaving Izuku feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. A job at a place like this would be perfect for him. It was a small place, so he'd be able to manage, and the customers seemed nice. Plus, it'd give him a chance to get out of his comfort zone and interact with more people. Moments later, a kind-looking elderly woman emerged from the back, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. She was petite, with her gray hair styled in a bob and a warm smile that made her wrinkles more pronounced. "You must be here about the job," she said, her voice a comforting purr. "I'm Hannah, the owner of this little slice of heaven. Tell me, what's your name?" Izuku gave her a bowing greeting and spoke in a kind voice. "I'm Izuku. Pleased to meet you." Miss Hannah's eyes lit up as she took in his demeanor. There was something about this young man that was incredibly endearing. His kindness was palpable, and she could sense his gentle spirit. She knew that he would be a perfect fit for the Made Miracle. "Oh, what a polite young man you are, Izuku," she said, her smile growing wider. "It's a pleasure to meet you. Tell me, do you have any experience in the service industry?" Izuku felt a moment of hesitation. He had experience, but not the kind that could be listed on a resume. "Well," he began, trying to find the right words, "I've had to clean up after myself quite a bit in the past. I know how to keep things neat and tidy, and I'm pretty good at multitasking despite being quirkless." Miss Hannah's eyes grew gentle, as if she understood the unspoken words behind his statement. She knew the struggle of a quirkless individual in a world that valued power above all else. I see, she said, nodding thoughtfully. That's a very important skill to have. Here at Made Miracle, we pride ourselves on providing not just excellent service, but a warm and welcoming environment for all our guests. Izuku felt a flutter of hope in his chest. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the place where he could finally be appreciated for who he was. He looked around the cafe again, taking in the cheerful decor and the friendly faces of the customers. It was a stark contrast to the harsh reality of his school life. Izuku spoke with honest shyness. I want to let you know I'm not very good with people. He stuttered a bit, his eyes darting to the floor. But I promise to work hard and learn quickly. I've always liked helping others and making them happy. Miss Hannah watched him with a knowing gaze. She saw the spark in his eyes, the same spark that once burned in her when she had first opened her cafe. Izuku, she began, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. I think I know exactly what you need. Her voice was soft but firm. I can see that you're a kind soul, and that's what we value here at Made Miracle. Yes, you'll need to learn the ropes, but I believe you'll fit in perfectly. Her words filled Izuku with a warmth that he hadn't felt in a long time. Someone actually believed in him, not because of what he could do with a quirk, but because of who he was as a person. He felt his shoulders relax, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to smile genuinely. Thank you, he said, his voice cracking a little with emotion. Miss Hannah giggled, patting his shoulder. Don't thank me just yet, she said, her eyes twinkling. You still need to prove yourself, young man. Izuku's eyes widened in hope. Does this mean I can work here? Miss Hannah's giggle grew into a gentle laugh. Yes, Izuku, it does. But before you get too excited, I should tell you, this isn't just any job. Hey, at Made Miracle, we serve more than just coffee and cake. We serve happiness. She gestured around the cafe, where every customer seemed to be smiling and relaxed. But don't worry. You'll catch on quickly, I'm sure. Izuku grew a wide smile and nodded with determination. I'll do my best, miss. Hannah's laugh grew into a hearty chuckle as she watched Izuku's transformation. I have no doubt, she said, her eyes sparkling with mischief before calling to the end of the cafe. Oh, Kana, I've found our newest member. Izuku's heart skipped a beat as he turned to look. A busty girl around his age strutted over, her hips swaying with the confidence of a cat walking on a fence. Her long, wavy white hair cascaded down her back, framing her gorgeous face. Her eyes were a piercing shade of emerald, and she wore a maid outfit that hugged her curves in all the right places. She looked like she had just stepped out of a shoujo manga. This is Kana, Miss Hannah introduced, her eyes twinkling as she watched the two young people size each other up. My granddaughter and the head maid here. She'll show you the ropes, Izuku. Izuku flushed to the sight of this beautiful girl as he held his trembling hand out. Hi, I'm Izuku. Kana giggled, her eyes sparkling with amusement at his nervousness. She took his hand in hers, her grip firm yet gentle, and gave it a firm shake. It's a pleasure to meet you, Izuku, she said, her voice as sweet as the sugar that coated the pastries displayed in the cafe's glass case. As she stepped closer, her grin grew more mischievous, while cupping his chin. Mom, you're kinda cute, Kana said, her eyes gleaming with playfulness. She reached up and tousled his hair, sending his heart racing. Izuku felt his face go up in flames, and his mind screamed, so close, so close, so close, as he stumbled backward, trying to maintain some semblance of composure. Kana's touch was electric, sending waves of heat through his body that he had never felt before. He could hear his own pulse in his ears, and he was acutely aware of every inch of space between them. Miss Hannah watched the exchange with a knowing smirk before she stepped in, placing a hand on Kana's shoulder. Now, Kana, she said, her voice a playful scold. Don't go scaring off our new recruit before he's had a chance to make his first cup of coffee. Kana giggled and took a step back, though she couldn't wipe the smile off her face. Sorry, Izuku-kun, she said, her eyes still dancing with mischief. I just wanted to welcome you properly. Izuku's cheeks remained scarlet, but he managed to nod and smile back. It's okay, he stuttered, still trying to catch his breath. I'm just not used to this. Kana grew a grin from hearing this. Oh, never been flirted with by a girl before? His cheeks burned deep while dipping his head, his two fingers poking together, showing his shyness. No. In her mind, Kana couldn't help but squeal at the adorable display. This boy was like a cute little rabbit that had stumbled into her garden. She had never seen someone blush so furiously over something so simple. It was like watching a kitten try to play it cool in front of a bowl of cream. She couldn't get enough of it. The way his eyes darted away from hers, the stutter in his voice when she touched his hair, the way his body leaned back slightly when she got too close. It was all so delicious. Miss Hannah watched her granddaughter with a knowing smile. Kana was notorious for her pickiness when it came to boys. She had seen many potential suitors come and go, each one failing to capture Kana's heart. But the way she was acting now, it was clear she had found something special in Izuku. Hannah felt a twinge of satisfaction knowing that Kana might have finally met her match. All right, Izuku, Miss Hannah said, her voice snapping him out of his daze. Let's talk schedules. She pulled out a planner from behind the counter and began to flip through the pages. You a student, yes? Izuku nodded, still trying to regain his composure from Kana's flirtation. Yes, I go to Aldara High. At the mention of the school's name, Miss Hannah's smile faded slightly, and Kana's playfulness took a backseat. The atmosphere grew tense as they both knew the reputation that loomed over the school. It was a place where quirkless children were often ostracized and bullied, their dreams squashed under the heavy weight of societal expectations. Hannah's grip on the planner tightened, and she shared a knowing look with Kana. Izuku looked between the two with concern when seeing their tenacity. Did I say something wrong? Miss Hannah quickly composed herself, flashing him a reassuring smile. No, Izuku, she said, shaking her head. Everything is fine. She continued. Now then, when can you work? Izuku took a deep breath, his heart still racing from Kana's touch. He gathered his thoughts and said, I can work from 5 to 10 p.m. on weekdays and longer hours on weekends. Miss Hannah nodded thoughtfully, jotting down the hours in her planner. That's excellent, she said, looking up at him with a gentle smile. But, Izuku, remember that school is important. You must ensure that your studies don't suffer. Izuku nodded, his eyes serious. Don't worry, Miss Hannah, he assured her. I have a plan to manage my time effectively. I'll be getting up earlier to do some training before school, and then I'll come here after my classes are done. I want to get stronger, not just for the job, but for myself. Miss Hannah studied him for a moment, seeing the determination etched into his features. You're quite the ambitious one, aren't you? She said, her voice filled with admiration. But remember, Izuku, you need to rest too. Don't push yourself too hard. I'll try not to, he replied warmly and bowed. Again, thank you so much for giving me a job here. I promise I will work my hardest. Miss Hannah nodded, satisfied with his answer. Good, she said. I'll give you a uniform when you come in tomorrow. Now, off you go. Izuku left the cafe feeling lighter than he had in a long time. He had a job, a chance to escape his dreary home life, and maybe, just maybe, a chance at making a friend who didn't just see him as the quirkless kid. He couldn't wait to start his new life, free from the shackles of his past. When Izuku left, Kana grit her teeth while clenching her fists. Aldara High, huh? She murmured, her eyes flashing with disdain. She couldn't help but feel a pang of disgust knowing what kind of hell Izuku had to endure every day. The school was notorious for its cruelty towards quirkless students, a breeding ground for bullies and those who believed in the superiority of quirks. Her mind drifted back to her cousin, Akane, who had attended that very school. Akane had been quirkless, too, and she had been a kind soul, much like Izuku. Kana remembered her as a timid girl with a love for baking and a dream of opening a bakery one day. But the relentless abuse she faced from her peers and teachers had crushed her spirit. The taunts, the beatings, the isolation, it had all been too much. Miss Hannah had tried to help, had reached out to her often, but Akane had always brushed it off with a sad smile, insisting she could handle it. But one fateful day, the smile was gone, and so was she. The news of her suicide hit Hannah like a freight train, leaving her devastated and furious. She had sworn to protect those who were vulnerable, to offer them a safe haven from the world that so often sought to break them. Now, as she watched Izuku walk away, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of concern for Kana. Her granddaughter had been through so much because of the same school, and she knew that working alongside someone who had also suffered there would stir up old memories and pain. But she also knew that sometimes the best way to heal was to face the past head-on. Kana's thoughts were racing as she stumped back to the kitchen. She had always known that schools like Aldura High were breeding grounds for despair, but hearing it from someone as innocent and earnest as Izuku hit home. Those vile teachers and students, she muttered under her breath, they should all be in jail for what they do to the quirkless. Miss Hannah, noticing her granddaughter's shift in mood, followed her into the kitchen, her eyes filled with understanding. Kana, my dear, she began, her voice carrying a hint of sadness. I know how much the stories of quirkless children suffering at that school affects you. Kana's shoulders slumped as she leaned against the counter, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. I don't understand, she said, her voice shaky. How can people be so cruel? Miss Hannah approached her gently, wrapping her arms around Kana's waist from behind. It's a sad truth of the world, my love, she murmured, her voice heavy with the weight of years of experience. But we can't let that darkness consume us. That's why we're here, to be the light in the lives of those who need it most. Kana leaned back into her grandmother's embrace, her body trembling slightly. I know, but it's just seeing someone like Akane, someone so kind, going through that it just makes me so mad, she said, her voice cracking. Miss Hannah tightened her hold on Kana, her own eyes glistening with unshed tears. I know, darling, she said, her voice soothing. But we must have faith that one day, the truth about that place will come out, and it will no longer be allowed to exist. How can you be so sure? Kana whispered, her voice laced with doubt. Miss Hannah pulled back slightly, looking into her granddaughter's eyes. Because, my dear, she said firmly, secrets like these never stay buried for long. Eventually, the light of truth has a way of exposing the darkness, no matter how hard people try to hide it. Her words were like a balm to Kana's soul. She took a deep breath, nodding slowly as she wiped at her eyes. I hope you're right, she murmured. Miss Hannah took Kana's hand and led her back to the dining area, where the customers were chattering happily. Look around, my love, she said, gesturing to the smiling faces. This is the difference we can make. We can't change the world overnight, but we can make sure that even in the darkest of places, there's a beacon of hope. Her eyes grew steely with determination. And as for Aldura High, she continued, it won't be long before their secrets come to light. I know they will face their punishment. And when that school is gone, Akane's soul can finally rest in peace. Kana sniffed, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. I hope you're right, she whispered. 10 months passed by in a whirlwind of activity for Izuku. The days grew shorter, the nights longer, but he didn't mind. Each step he took was a step closer to the life he wanted. He found a gym that catered to quirkless individuals, offering specialized training programs to help them become self-sufficient and strong. The dojo he attended on weekends taught him the ancient art of Aikido, which emphasized using an attacker's own force against them, something he figured would come in handy in the chaotic world of heroism, even if he wasn't one, as well if he needed to deft himself from his bullies. As the weeks turned into months, Izuku saw the changes in his body. The skinny kid with the unshakable spirit grew into a lean, toned young man with a sense of purpose. His muscles grew firm, and his movements grew more fluid as he learned to control his body. The exercises and techniques pushed him to his limits, but the joy on his face was unmistakable as he felt himself getting stronger. Maid Miracle had become a second home to him if his first one didn't count. Miss Hannah's kindness and guidance made him feel welcome, and he found a surprising kinship with Kana. Despite her playful teasing, she had a fiery spirit that matched his own determination. They grew closer, sharing stories of their struggles and supporting each other's dreams. The customers grew to adore him, his shy demeanor and earnest efforts to serve them bringing a sense of warmth to their days. The other maids in the cafe couldn't help but take a liking to him as well. They would giggle and whisper to each other when he wasn't looking, their eyes sparkling with mischief. It started with small gestures, a gentle pat on the shoulder, an extra dollop of whipped cream on his coffee, and subtle compliments about his growing physique. Their flirtations grew bolder as they watched him fluster, his cheeks turning a delightful shade of pink whenever they got too close. Izuku, who had never really experienced such attention, was at first taken aback but soon grew to appreciate their kindness. They saw beyond his quirklessness and treated him like an equal, even if it was wrapped in a veil of teasing. It was a stark contrast to the coldness and cruelty he faced at school and the prison he called home. He found himself looking forward to his shifts, not just for the sense of belonging but for the chance to make the maids laugh with his earnest efforts and clumsy attempts to handle their flirting. The maids adored Izuku like a baby bunny that had wandered into their garden of smiles and laughter. Every day, they watched him blossom into a more confident and capable individual, and they couldn't help but be drawn to his earnest charm. Their flirting grew more playful and frequent, their eyes lighting up with glee as they watched him stumble over his words and fumble with the coffee cups. The maids also gave him a gentle nudge towards the dating world. They saw in him a kind of purity that was rare these days, a heart unblemished by the harshness that often came with the pursuit of power and status. They had all faced the same discrimination, some being quirkless themselves or weak ones that won't cut out to be a hero, but they had found solace and strength in each other at Made Miracle. They hoped that by teasing him and making him feel desired, they could help him build the self-confidence to navigate the complexities of relationships. They also gave him their numbers, scribbled on cute little pieces of paper, slipped into his pocket with a wink and a whispered, "Call me when you're free, Izuku-kun." At first, he was surprised, then overwhelmed, but as he grew more comfortable in their company, he found the courage to reciprocate their playful banter. He had never felt so alive, so seen, so desired. It was intoxicating, and it filled him with a newfound confidence that spilled over into his school life. Kana, who grew close to Izuku the most, found endless amusement in her colleagues' affection for him. Instead of feeling jealous, she enjoyed watching them fluster him. It was like a dance, the maids flitting around him, leaving a trail of giggles and blushes wherever they went. The sight brought her joy, knowing that he was being accepted and loved in a world that often shunned quirkless people. Miss Hannah, who observed from the sidelines, felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had known that Izuku had something special within him from the moment he stepped into her cafe. His growth was not just physical but emotional as well. The shy and self-doubting boy had transformed into a young man with a gentle strength that drew people to him like a moth to a flame. His dedication to his job and his kindness towards others were traits that she valued highly, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in his development. Izuku's life grew increasingly busy with his rigorous training schedule and his blossoming career at Made Miracle. The hours at the gym stretched into the evenings, leaving him with just enough time to grab a bite to eat before collapsing into bed. His weekends were no longer reserved for lazy mornings and afternoon video games. They were now dedicated to perfecting his Aikido techniques and serving the adoring customers at the cafe. His parents, still caught up in their own world of daunting his sister and their roles as heroes, never seemed to notice the change in their son's routine. Izuku has come to terms that his parents' world revolved around his sister and her heroic endeavors, leaving little to no room for him. He pours his heart into his training and his work, finding solace in the camaraderie of the dojo and the warmth of the maid cafe. His weekdays are a blur of schoolwork, gym sessions, and a few hours of sleep, while weekends are a whirlwind of apron ties and clinking teacups. Even with the time and effort of his training and his job, Izuku never neglected his schoolwork. He had a goal in mind, to graduate with a teaching degree. He saw education as a way to give back to the world that had often overlooked him, to help shape the future heroes that would come from all walks of life. His dedication to his studies was unwavering, often staying up late into the night to finish assignments and prepare for exams. One evening, he spoke with Principal Nezu and Principal Shizuka about his vision for the future of his students. He described a comprehensive guidebook, one that would break down the intricacies of various quirks, providing insight and practical advice for their development. It would be a tool for both quirked and quirkless students alike, offering strategies to maximize their potential and prepare them for the unpredictable challenges of heroism. The two educators, impressed by his initiative, agreed to support his project. They saw the merit in his idea and knew that such a resource could be invaluable to students who felt overlooked by traditional methods. They promised to allocate funds from the school's budget to cover the cost of publishing the book once it was complete. Izuku also added to the two that the guidebook should be kept confidential and only accessible to him and his 20 students. He knew the potential danger that such information could pose in the wrong hands. The thought of villains exploiting his hard work to harm others sent a shiver down his spine. Both Principal Nezu and Principal Shizuka nodded gravely, understanding the weight of his words. They agreed that the knowledge contained within the pages could indeed be a double-edged sword. But Izuku's heart was too pure to hold on to such power solely for himself. He also added to them that if any of his students felt the information would be beneficial to the students of Anaya High, Izuku would not stand in their way if they wished to share the knowledge. After all, he believed that everyone deserved a chance to improve and reach their full potential, regardless of whether they were formally enrolled in his classes or not. The two principals shared a knowing look. They had seen the light of heroism in Izuku's eyes before, but this was something more, a selflessness that was rare in a society so often driven by competition and status. They knew that with this attitude, Izuku had the potential to become a beacon of hope and guidance for many young minds who struggled to find their place in a quirk-centric world. Boom! The sound of a blasting thunder and wind kicked up at a beach that was covered in some trash. It was known as Dagoba Beach. Oh, damn it! The voice of Izumi yelled while clutching her swollen red and bruised finger. Izumi had been training with her father, All Might, for the last few months, and the process of mastering One for All had been anything but a walk in the park. Despite the excitement of receiving such a powerful quirk, she found herself struggling to harness its full potential. Her father, though patient and encouraging, couldn't hide his concern. The quirk, known for its explosive strength, seemed to resist her in a way that was unlike any other user he had seen before. The beach was littered with the remnants of her failed attempts. Each explosion left a crater in the sand, a stark reminder of the gap between her aspirations and her current capabilities. Her father's eyes bore into her with a mix of pride and urgency, urging her to push harder, to become the hero she was destined to be. But with every try, she felt more frustrated, more lost. Her body ached, and her spirit wavered under the weight of expectation. From the beginning, Izumi believed she would handle One for All easily, but reality hit her like a ton of bricks. The first time she had tried to use the quirk, she had been so overwhelmed by the power coursing through her that she hadn't been able to control it. The result was a catastrophic failure. Her whole arm had snapped like a twig under the pressure of the unbridled power. She had screamed in agony as bone and muscle gave way, and her father had rushed to her side, his eyes wide with shock. All Might, despite his immense experience as a hero, was at a loss for words. He had never seen such a powerful reaction from a new user of One for All. He took her to Recovery Girl and got her arm fixed. She was one of the very few who knew about One for All, and her gentle touch had mended the damage in no time. Yet despite this, he can see something in the old woman's eyes about him choosing Izumi. He didn't know if it was approval or concern, but he knew it was something significant. For the next several weeks, Izumi tried everything to control the quirk. She read books, watched videos, and practiced techniques that her father had used, but nothing seemed to work. Her body felt like a cage too small for the beast inside it, and the more she tried to contain it, the more it pushed back. Her father's worried gaze grew heavier with each passing day, his encouragements feeling more like a burden than a source of strength. One day, Izumi thought of an idea. Maybe using her other quirk, telekinesis, could help her control the explosive power of One for All. Her eyes lit up with hope as she tried it in one of their training sessions. However, the result was nothing short of disastrous. As she focused her mind and pushed her telekinesis to manipulate the energy within her arm, the power of One for All clashed with her telekinesis. The two forces collided, and she could feel the very fabric of her being strained to hold them together. The pain was intense, like nothing she had ever experienced. Her arm swelled and turned an alarming shade of purple, and she feared she had made a mistake that would cost her more than just a chance to be a hero. With a tremendous effort, she managed to release the energy before it could do any permanent damage. But the price was high. Her arm hung limp at her side, useless and bruised. Her father rushed over, his own expression a mirror of the shock and worry she felt. They both knew that something was wrong, that the combination of her quirks was volatile in a way that neither of them had anticipated. They took a step back, staring at each other across the beach littered with the evidence of their failure. Despite getting the arm fixed and recovered, the failed attempts still lingered. One day, Izumi had an epiphany. If she couldn't control the full brunt of One for All, then maybe she could channel it in smaller, more manageable bursts. She approached her training with a new sense of purpose, focusing on the tips of her fingers instead of her entire arm. It was a delicate dance, one that required precision and finesse rather than brute strength. Izumi tested this at one of her training sessions. She gave it a try. The result was her able to generate the powerful force of One for All at 100%. But despite this, she was still injured at her finger where she used the quirk. She can't keep hurting herself from this and needed to find a way to stop the painful backlash the quirk was giving her. She worked days and nights, her determination unwavering despite the pain. Yet, no matter how she tried, the quirk remained as elusive and destructive as ever. She can't understand why she can't master the quirk. It was almost like it was fighting against her. Her father's words of encouragement echoed in her mind, but the doubt grew stronger with every failed attempt. Izumi walked to Tashi while holding her injured finger. "Still nothing, Dad. I don't understand why I keep failing." She looked up at the symbol of peace. "Have you been through something like this?" Tashi took a moment to reflect, his eyes looking far into the horizon as if searching for an answer in the distant waves. "You know, honey," he began, "when I first got One for All, it was like slipping into a pair of gloves made for my hands. The power flowed through me as if it had always been a part of me." He turned to face her, his eyes filled with a warmth that seemed to hold the secrets of the universe. "But that's not to say it was easy. I had my share of challenges, but they were different. The power never hurt me in the way it's hurting you." Izumi listened intently, her heart sinking. She had hoped for a glimmer of understanding, a shared struggle that could bond them in this journey. Instead, she felt even more alone, her path seemingly unique and fraught with peril. "But why?" she asked, her voice quivering. "Why is it so hard for me?" "I don't know, sweetheart," Tashi replied, his voice filled with empathy. "But I believe that every quirk has its own soul, its own will. Maybe One for All is just taking its time to get to know you, to understand the strength you possess not just in your body, but in your heart and mind." Izumi nodded, taking a deep breath as she thought about Izuku. Her heart swelled with love and determination. She had always wanted to protect him, to be the hero that he deserved, to be the woman who could stand by his side, equal in power and courage. The idea of failing him was unbearable, and she knew that mastering One for All was the only way to ensure she could be there for him when he needed it most. The two of them continued to train, pushing through the pain and doubt. Each day, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the beach as their shadows grew longer with exhaustion. Yet, they never gave up. They talked less about the future and more about the moment, focusing on the small victories and the subtle shifts in power that indicated progress. One night, after struggling with training, Izumi plopped on her bed and examined her bandaged finger. She promised herself to master One for All. "I promise I will be the hero you need, Izuku," she whispered before falling asleep. Dreamscape. Izumi's eyes snapped open as she found herself in a place she never saw. It was a black void of nothing with a stone ground she stood upon. Howling wind echoed around her, yet no wind was felt. "Where am I?" she thought before seeing she was mostly covered in a dark green mist. Minus her mouth covered up, only her face and hair was exposed. She tried moving but found it useless. "What is this?" She tried speaking but nothing came out. She then felt a few presence before her and looked up. Her eyes widened to what she saw. 6 silhouettes emerged from the darkness, their eyes glowing like malevolent embers. They stood in a semicircle around her, their forms indistinct and shrouded in shadow. The hostility that emanated from them was palpable, making the very air feel thick and oppressive. The anger and disgust in their gazes were like a slap in the face, sending waves of fear rippling through her core. Then, emerging from the others was a beautiful curvy woman. She looked like her mother Inko, but her hair was jet black with a mole under her lip. She wore a skin-tight black hero costume with red shoes and yellow gloves. Behind her was a white cape that flowed. The woman's eyes narrowed as she stared at Izumi, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her gaze was cold and intimidating, sending a chill down Izumi's spine. It was as if she could see right through her, and the anger in her eyes was unlike anything Izumi had ever encountered before. She felt like she was being judged, like she wasn't worthy of holding the power of One for All. Izumi Yagi, the woman spoke, her voice full of anger and disappointment. Izumi flinched a bit as the woman spoke again. Never in our years of searching did we expect our hopes to rest upon someone as weak as you. The words stung like 1,000 needles piercing her soul. The woman took a step closer, and the green mist grew denser around her. You think you can handle the power of One for All? You, who cannot even control your own emotions, who let fear dictate your actions. She spat the words out, her voice filled with contempt. You are not a hero, not in the truest sense of the word. You are a mere shadow, a fraud playing dress-up in your father's shadow and your own lies and illusions. Izumi's heart felt like it was being squeezed by a vice. Her breaths grew shallow, and she felt her knees buckling under the weight of the accusations. Yet, she couldn't find the strength to protest, to defend herself. The woman's words hit too close to home, echoing the whispers of doubt that had plagued her since the moment she had received the quirk. The woman stepped closer still, her eyes piercing through the mist. You will never be the true ninth holder, she hissed. Your weakness will be your undoing, and you will only bring suffering to those you claim to protect. The other silhouettes nodded in agreement, their eyes burning with a fierce determination that seemed to fuel the woman's words. The quirk of One for All is not just about power, she continued, but about the hearts of those who wield it. You lack the courage to face your fears, the empathy to understand the burden that comes with such strength. Izumi's eyes filled with tears as the woman's words cut through her like a knife. She didn't understand what this place was, or why these figures were here to judge her. Panic set in, her breathing quickened, and she tried once more to break free from the immovable force that held her in place. But it was no use. The green mist tightened its grip around her, and she felt the weight of the accusations pressing down on her chest, making it difficult to breathe. As the woman spoke, the 6 figures behind her began to step forward, their eyes glowing with a fierce light that matched the intensity of her words. The ground beneath them trembled with each step, the air grew colder, and the mist grew thicker. The light from their eyes pierced the darkness, illuminating the contempt etched into their faces. Izumi felt a cold sweat break out on her forehead as she struggled to comprehend what was happening. Why were these figures here? Who were they? And why did they despise her so much? She had never seen them before, yet their presence was so overwhelming it was as if she had known them her entire life. One for All will never be yours, the woman declared, her voice booming through the void. You are not the hero we hoped for. The green mist around Izumi grew denser, its pressure increasing until she could hardly move. Her eyes widened in terror as she realized the gravity of the situation. The woman's words hit her like a ton of bricks, each syllable a crushing blow to her spirit. With a sudden burst of energy, the woman raised her hand, and a ball of light, a mix of the 7 colors of the quirks, began to form in her palm. You are not worthy, she shouted, and the light grew brighter, the colors swirling into a dizzying maelstrom. The silhouettes behind her mirrored the action, each raising their hands to contribute to the growing orb of power. The pressure around Izumi grew unbearable, the winds howling louder as the sphere of light grew larger and more intense. She could feel the heat from it, even though she was still unable to move. The colors grew more vivid, the blues and reds, the yellows and greens, all mixing together in a chaotic dance, creating a blinding spectacle that seemed to consume the entirety of the void. And then, with a thunderous roar, the light erupted forth. The six figures thrust their arms forward in unison, sending the sphere hurtling towards her. The colors collided with the green mist, which screamed in protest before dissipating entirely, revealing the terrified girl beneath. The sphere struck her with the force of 1,000 suns, and she felt herself being torn apart from the inside out. Her screams echoed through the void, a desperate cry for salvation that went unanswered. Dream end. Izumi's eyes shot open, and she bolted upright in bed, the dampness of a sheet sticking to her skin. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a caged animal desperately seeking escape. She gasped for air, her chest heaving as if she had been running a marathon in the depths of hell. The echoes of the dream still clung to her, the screams of the mist-covered figures and the woman reverberating in her ears. The darkness of her room was a stark contrast to the vivid nightmare she had just endured. Her trembling hands reached up to rub the sleep from her eyes, the feeling of the mist clinging to her skin still lingering, making her shiver. The woman's voice echoed through her mind, taunting her with the words, "You are not worthy." It was a painful reminder of every time she had felt like a disappointment, every time she had doubted herself. The weight of the accusation was crushing, and she couldn't shake the feeling that there was a kernel of truth to it. Izumi took a moment to collect herself, her heart still racing as she tried to piece together what the dream could mean. The green mist, the woman who looked like her mother but wasn't, the silhouettes of past holders, it was all too much to process. But one thing was clear. She didn't want to be seen as a fraud, a mere shadow of the hero she aspired to be. She didn't want to let down her father's legacy, or the trust that had been placed in her with One for All. She can't let him down or Izuku. So, this was the end of part 2 of this series. Stay tuned for next part of this series, and if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.